We'll get rocking and rolling. Okay, it should, yep, should be showing that it's recording. So welcome, happy Friday. Thanks for everybody being on. We have a few people, I don't know, Shantae and Mariah couldn't make it today because they're at a golf tournament. But I know that's pretty rough. But anyway, hopefully they'll have a good day. Is it raining out there though? No? Okay, so they're not going to get any rain, but all right.
It's certainly overcast, so that's part of the fun.
Sprinkling here a little bit. So let's see, who read the culture piece last week? Anybody remember? Okay, if you don't remember, then I can pick on anybody because you don't remember. I was going to have Arturo read it. Did you read it last week?
I didn't, and I was pulling my culture piece for today too.
Okay, so let me pull up the item here, and we will share it. Cool. There we go. Can you see it?
Yep, looking all clear.
Awesome.
All right, so we are ambitious, self-motivated, self-accountable, and self-managed. We strive to achieve the common goal and do what is necessary to make it happen. We empower our people. We don't wait to be told. We see, we evaluate, and we do.
Awesome. Yes. So I think that's a great one because it talks about being able to empower our people and not have to hold your hand, not have to babysit, all those good things. Maria, did you have a comment? And then Shane did. Maybe she did not. Shane?
That was perfect that you chose that one. And Arturo actually read it. The reason is I couldn't have been more impressed with what Arturo and the team did to fill a brand new client that we had. I placed the order, and literally Arturo, 4 hours later, you responded and said, hey, ring, ring, ring. Guess what? We've got these filled. It was awesome. Self-managed, motivated, driven. I was so impressed. Arturo, you and your team are just amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's the great thing. And I think everybody on this call understands that. And, we are self-motivated, we are ambitious. Again, we don't need people. We empower our people to do what they need to do. We don't need people to have to be babysat. And if we do that, if we have to do that, instantly you've hired the wrong person, because that is not our culture at all. So anyway, good job. Thank you. I appreciate that. And let's get on to what our topic is today. So let me just ask this question. Let's just get some ideas. What were some of the things you pulled from the chapter that we just read out of the 9 Lies at Work, about work? Anybody have something that they thought was interesting? Just give one piece at a time. Ashley Labram.
I know it's at the end of the chapter, but they talk about trusting the intelligence of your team. And I think that's something managers as a whole struggle with. But I love that whole piece about trusting the intelligence of your team.
Yeah, and we're going to dig into that for sure. Yeah, about that exact topic. So anybody else?
I like the along with that trust is the way to get that is frequent check-ins. Minimum 1 check-in a week with each individual to build that trust and also have insight of what's going on with that individual, and then hopefully can build a high-performing team with that. So.
Yep. Anybody else?
To me, I just love the part where the entire chapter encourage our organizations and all individuals to cultivate the culture of adaptability, resilience, and continuous learning.
Okay, good. Yeah, these are good thoughts. So what about the title? What's the title? Jason?
9 Lies About Work.
But lie number 2 is?
The best plan wins.
The best plan wins. Does that, so what did we learn about that?
Does it?
It's a lie.
Yeah.
It's a lie.
It's
The
all
truth
about
is,
continuous sprints.
what's that, Techie?
It's all about continuous sprints. You're gonna learn. You're gonna figure out what's going on in real time, and then if you be flexible
Yeah.
with your plan, then you fail.
Now, here's a disclaimer. I'm not saying don't plan anything, okay? Because some people go, "Hey, well, you just said we don't plan anything now." Like, no, we still have plans. We still have our 1-page plan that the company has, but what we learned from that was the plan is usually obsolete within a couple of months. And why is that?
Because
Well,
everything's
Carrie,
changing.
Sorry, Ashley first, and then
yeah,
Joe.
Ashley first. Go.
Oh, it's because everything is changing and we just need to be flexible. We need to adapt to every situation, to every circumstance. And we need to understand that we can never compare what is happening today with what was happening 3 months ago or last year or 3 years back.
Yeah, good. Joe?
So I still have a little bit of issue with the focus on the best plan wins. I do think that is a lie. And I do think that the spirit of the conversation is about trying to convert your thinking over to intelligence. But there's a statement out there, just like what Ashley was saying, is no plan survives first contact with the enemy.
That's right.
So think of, I don't know if anyone loves sports as much as I do. Football and basketball are mine, and everyone may have a different one. But all week long, you prepare, you plan, you prepare, you plan, you prepare, you plan. And yet, when you go out there on the field, just sticking with the plan and just sticking with the game plan isn't necessarily a winning strategy. It's how is your offense strategy being received by the defense? Are you getting your butt kicked? You need to make, adjustments and changes. And so that game that's actually happening and physically happening is much different and can be much different than what you planned and prepared for all week long. You've got to make adjustments. And so if you just stuck with the plan, just like in that George Clooney movie, which not a huge George Clooney fan, by the way, he's way too attractive for me. I'm just teasing with you guys. But the best intelligence wins. And I do think that there's a lot of merit there, but that, like Carrie was saying, doesn't mean that a plan isn't important. I do think that it does mean that you have to realize that when you're playing the game, you've got to get intelligence.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing is, you'll see a coach out on the field with a clipboard and he's got, they have the plans. Those plans have been designed and the plays have been designed, and then they start getting intelligence back and they start, redesigning and adjusting to those. And you'll hear the interviews, at halftime, "Hey, what are you going to do to adjust?" Every single game, that question comes up to the coach. But that is their job, is to look at the things that are happening and how do they adjust. So it's that intelligence that's coming. They have guys sitting up in the booth watching the game, so they're getting intelligence, and the technology says they shoot it down to the coach, and then they pick things going on. And so all of this is happening. Maddie?
Exactly to your point of like adjusting and realigning throughout the game. I like that it was talking about you have to be communicating with the whole team when you're aligning and readjusting. Because I thought it was funny when they were talking about every team goes and does their offsites and comes back with a different plan, and then everyone's operating on a different plan. I just thought that was really important, that when you're readjusting, that it's still like communicating weekly with every team member so that everyone knows what the new plan is.
Yeah. Yeah. Some really, really important stuff. Kyle?
I just wanted to say on all 9 of these things, they're all really, the disclaimer is that they're all important, even what they call a lie. It's just that it's refocusing some typical things in business, right? For example, people do need feedback. We obviously we need feedback, right? It's just that we also need attention. And you can't have a leader that just gives feedback and doesn't give attention. And so really, if we looked at all of these items kind of like that, we realize what else we need to be doing as leaders. And oftentimes the other thing that's being pointed out is the more important side of our leadership. And so yeah, it is important what company we work for, but it's far more important who we're working with, right? Planning is a good thing to do. Intelligence is a better thing to have, right? So I think if we just looked at all of these things that way, and I think the title 9 Lies About Work is interesting because it helps us refocus our priorities in these areas. Not that the ideas are necessarily false, though.
Right, and I think again we're going to plan. We're going to have plans. When you know, it says in the book here, you know, as a new manager, you know, the first thing you're going to be asked to do is come up with a plan. So, but without the intelligence, without the reality of, you know, what's happening day to day, you know, that's the real kicker with this. You know, how's the plan working, and how do you make the adjustments, and how do you move forward? And you know, I mean, we do this as a company right now, and we'll talk a little bit about some of these. So today, Joe and I are working on this, and I'm gonna ask Ted to do something for us here in just a minute as well. He's very up on this, so it's nothing shocking, Ted. But Joe and I are going to talk a little bit about this. But I think, you know, to Kyle's thing again, it's not that we're throwing out everything. It's just that we're saying, hey, look, you know, there's some other stuff that we need to be doing, and we have the mechanisms already in place. We are doing them when it comes to intelligence. We just have to be better at doing them. But because of change, you know, the market, the economy, you know, clients' needs, you know, supply chain, you know, construction going up and down. I mean, all of these things change. And if we have a plan at the beginning of the year and we say, well, this is our plan, nothing changes, we're going to just stay focused on the plan and there's no adjustments along the way, we're going to fail. We have to make adjustments along the way. So that's really an important part of, you know, what we're doing here. And the whole point behind it was, you know, again, Mike Tyson's another one who said, you know, your plan for the fight changes the first smack in the face you get. Okay. So it's really important to, you have a plan as you go in, and then the first hit in the mouth, you're like, okay, now I got to, you know, and you can hear the people in the background going, you know, step forward, step back, jab, 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 jab. I mean, this is intelligence, like immediately real-time intelligence that they're doing with this, you know, when they're fighting, if you've ever watched a fight, or if you've ever been in one, maybe some of you box or something. And so, you know, so all of this is an important piece to, you know, to what we're doing. Again, plans, we're not saying throw out your plans and don't ever plan. What we're saying is there's other resources that we need to use as well as we get going through this. So so in here, this is kind of what Kyle was talking about, though. It's not true that the best plan wins. It's true that the best intelligence wins. Okay, so you have the plan, and then the intelligence coming back and forth will help that win. Okay, that's what will win. But there were 3 things. It says, what can you do as a team leader to create such an intelligent system for your team? Now I'm on page 62, I believe, in my book. If you guys have that, there are 3 things that it talked about, and you can use your book. Give me some ideas. What are those 3 things, and what does that mean when it talks about that? Everybody got their book out, and page 62, it should say first, second, and third. Is that right? Anybody disagree? Okay, so if it's not the same, you know, the page before says, what can you do as a team leader to create such an intelligence system for your team? And then there's first, second, and third. See if you can find that. Ashley, what's one of them? Ashley Labrum.
Liberate as much information as you possibly can.
Okay, what does that mean? What does it say there when it talks about liberate as much information as you possibly can? Liberate.
So it's not so much about understanding the data and breaking it down into manageable chunks. It's literally just gathering as much as you can and pushing it out, all of it.
Yeah. So, and when we say liberate, we mean to free up information, free up the information so that we have it, you know, at our access. Right there at the end, it says, make sure your team is swimming. I love this, you know, analogy, swimming in real-time information all the time. Okay. So how can we do that in our jobs? How can we make sure your team is swimming in real-time information all the time? How can we do that? Give me some ideas. You guys have a team of people, or you may have a team of people, or you're working with a team of people. What would be some ways that we can make sure the team is swimming in real-time information in our positions, in our industry, in our company?
I could probably speak to that for a moment. Oh, Bree,
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry, and my camera still doesn't work, but I was gonna say even the daily check-ins, like morning or after late afternoon check-ins, it's even like a quick 15 to 30-minute call with your team, see what's high level, what's changed, any behavioral changes with clients or changes that they want to make with their roles, those different kinds of things, and just seeing is there any high level like gotchas that we need to figure out right then and there.
Good. First Joe and then Maria.
No, let's go Maria.
Okay, Maria.
I think that keeping up with the changes that society has, and enforcing that with our team is really important. Because can you imagine if smart staffing still did paper applications and everyone had to come into the office to be e-verified? Like that wouldn't have worked during COVID time. You know, during COVID, we had to change a lot with what everyone else was doing. So when everyone else is changing, we need to adapt to those changes, and we need to make sure that our team can adapt to those changes.
Mm-hmm. Good. Thank you. That's a great idea. Joe?
So I, before this meeting, asked a couple team members to say, all right, well, what are things we can do? I'd love to maybe even say something a little bit different, which is what are maybe some examples that we're already doing? And I asked a couple of our team members, because we have 4 different, business verticals, many different teams that all represent, different aspects of our business right here, right now, and leaders. And, from the executive team to those who are on the front lines to everywhere in between to, business development. And so I asked a couple people this. I actually asked 3. I asked Ashley, I asked Bree, and I asked John if they had any ideas or any examples that on how they liberate data from their team. And do you guys mind if we call on you and ask if you have any ideas or examples of ways you already existing do that? Ashley, what's your thoughts first, and then Bree, and then John, if that's okay.
Yeah, so a couple of things we do. We have a calendar, right? A recruiting calendar that we schedule our interviews on, and then we go in real time and we change whether the candidate has shown up. If they went out to interview, they're different colored. So you can look at that calendar in real time and see a pattern of you know, if we're scheduling interviews in this time, you can see that these people didn't show up, and we can kind of adjust from there. And then we also look at data of how many interviews we sent out to a client versus how many people they hired. We're looking at that daily to see. We have a board we run with names on it. We look at that daily to see if there's any patterns in there of something we would need to change.
It's a pretty killer example of getting real time and as probably close to the color board that they were talking about anyway, you know, in the RAF to really have that intelligence. I'd love to see it at some point too. That's pretty cool. So you know where customers interviews are, and it's a shared calendar between everybody, right?
Yeah, definitely. That was Mariah's brainchild. It's worked out really great.
Awesome. Bree, any ideas or examples?
Well, kind of actually piggybacking off of a little bit of what Ashley said as well. We do things a little bit different to where we kind of have an account manager and a recruiter no matter what in every situation and scenario. And the account manager and recruiter are connected on every submitted interview. All of those things, we have a spreadsheet that we have that everyone inputs, like how many submitted, interviewed, screened, how many were offered, those different kinds of things, kind of like the same like Ashley has in real time. But one of our big things that we also do is we do schedule one-on-ones every single week with our hiring managers, because everything can change. And once you've sent out an interview and maybe they decide, I need something different in this interview, or I need something different in this person per se, we're able to know in real time, like, okay, we need to pivot and adjust, or maybe the role has changed. We're always constantly building a relationship with these people and kind of getting more information, and also seeing areas where we can kind of jump in and take over, or that we can offer up something. Because as you get to know people, they're more open. And so they'll say, oh yeah, we're struggling in this department, or we're struggling in this department. And it gives us an opportunity to say, hey, did you know that we do that too? Or we can help with that. Or I think that's one of our biggest things, is that we've gained a lot of extra work with these clients by doing those things once a week with them.
That's a killer example of that's a killer example of how to use intelligence to grow the business too. That's very impressive. John, any thoughts too? John's been pretty under the weather, but I don't know if you have a voice yet back completely, John, but I appreciate you being willing to say a few things.
No problem. Yeah, the voice is back. It's just you'll hear a cough every once in a while. All right, guys. Like right now. One of the things, and I like what everybody's saying. I mean, intelligence gathering is one of the things that you need to do in any job, I think, any position. The question that Joe asked me was, are there any unusual intelligence gathering measures that you guys put together that are not in your regular KPIs? So, we all have productivity KPIs. We all have, interview, recruiting, placement. We have those type of regular KPIs. We also have when your boots are on the ground. And I love the fact that we were all talking about intelligence, and before this, we talked about the last chapter, how plans, best laid plans, right? But everybody's got a saying. We used to have one in the military, which was, all plans change the moment boots hit the ground. It didn't matter how much intelligence we had. The moment that we landed, the moment that we touched ground, the moment that we set out, things changed, always. And so one of the things that we do in the front lines when it comes to clients in intelligence gathering is getting to know the business that you are providing a service for. For example, manufacturing, 3PLs, right? Packaging. Getting to know how many people it requires to run a line. How many people does it take to get product from point A to point Z, right? And so you need to pick the brain of all the supervisors and all the managers, so that you get something called a futures board. So every company has a futures board. They know what's coming next week. They know what's coming next month. They have purchasing. The purchasing department has bought X amount of ingredients, and they have 2 clients that are asking for X amount of products by X date. By knowing how many people we currently have on assignment and getting to know how many people they'll actually need in 2 weeks, in a week, in a month, then we can plan ahead on our recruiting efforts. And it's one of the things that we do at every client site on account management. You get to know what is it that they do, how do they do it, how many people they need. And if you get to know that intelligence, then you keep checking the futures board. Everyone has one, every location has one. So we know that, let's say they're running 5 lines and each line requires 10 people. But next week you see scheduled a super line, and a super line requires 12. You know you need 12 extra people because they do not have it. They have all 5 lines scheduled plus a 6th one. So now you have a week or 2 weeks advance notice before even the supervisors or managers tell you anything, and you start recruiting. And so that you're ahead with that information. So that's the type of unusual KPI or intelligence gathering that we do at a site. It's not real time per se, but you're planning for future requests. So that's my example.
Back to you, Carrie. Sorry if I hijacked a little bit.
No, that's
Those
good.
were
I
just
loved
some
it.
really good examples.
No, that's good. That's what we want to hear. So thank you for everybody because those are really good ideas, and there's lots of them. Let's go on. Maddie, will you read? So page 43, I guess, is what it is. You posted that for us. So can we read the second one? Just read the kind of the headline.
Yeah, so it says, second, watch carefully to see which data your people find useful.
Yeah, so what were they talking about there? Do you remember?
I think that was about when they were talking about pivoting your KPIs. Is that right? I listened to
Or
this yesterday.
accuracy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Pivoting what's going to make the most sense for your team instead of just sticking with one metric the entire time.
Right. Yeah. So the very important thing in that number 2 is be extremely vigilant about accuracy. Make sure. So it's not so much about how much data and making sense of it, but be accurate so that people can understand, the accuracy of that. Okay. And the third one, and then I'm gonna ask Ted something here. The third one is what? Shane, do you have that one in front of you?
I don't. I'm sorry. It's sitting up at my bed side, and I haven't run and grabbed it yet.
Okay. Anybody else? Ashley Hosang, do you have it in front of you?
No, I don't. It's in my nightstand too.
Well, I guess you guys are reading it at night. That's good. Does anybody
I got
have?
it, Carrie.
Okay.
Third, trust your people to make sense of the data.
Okay, what does that mean?
Make it so that it's understandable to them, not to you. So don't just throw it out there that it makes sense to you. Make sure that they understand as well.
Why? Because they're on the front line, right?
Right.
I mean, that's the thing, and they're on the front line, and this is where the military deal comes in. Frontline people know what's happening, and so information and intelligence needs to be, put in the right perspective there. So, Bree, you had your hand up. Were you going to read that or?
Yes, I was, but I guess I could kind of bridge off of that too. What's great about having these, I guess the data to decipher is this is reason why a plan can't always work is, let's say you put in a lot of activity somewhere. And you put in a lot of activity. Let's say you have 10 roles and you put activity on all these roles, but then you realize at the end of the week when we're going through all of our data, okay, we need to pivot because we're struggling in these 3 areas and we need to put all of our eggs in that basket to get those 3 done, and then we can pivot the next week depending on how it shakes out. It's recruiting. I mean, everything changes. You could have a role like 5 roles one day and then 1 role the next. It's kind of helps just kind of see a trend as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. So just be thinking about these things, how they kind of work. Ashley, did you have a question or a comment? Okay. So be thinking about these 3 things. How can we use them? How can we use them to our best ability? So another source that we have, this is where I'm going to ask Ted to help, is our PAT, our priority alignment tool. That's a way of gathering intelligence. And I wanted to see if Ted, can you explain from your point of view, just give us a brief description of what PAT is for somebody that's not doing it or not on it yet, and what you're looking for when you look at the PAT. What is it about the PAT? Why is that important?
So it stands for Priority Alignment Tool, and it's a way for a manager and an employee to be aligned around what's important. I think it's also a way for a manager to lead while not being present, so that, you know, if you have a team, you can ensure that they're focusing on what's important, they're focusing on the key activities, they're thinking about the directions that you've given them, and then reporting back, all without you having to go intervene or even go talk to them. And so, you know, you start with roles and responsibility. You think of what are the maybe the 3 or 4, could be 5, I guess, key roles in this position. And so for, if it was a salesperson, it might be prospecting, it might be servicing existing accounts, it might be closing, you know, managing my pipeline. Maybe those are your 3 roles. And I know we've identified already what we think these are, but I don't know what, I haven't looked at them for a while. So let's say those are 3 roles for a salesperson. And then within there's responsibilities. Within prospecting, there's maybe 2 or 3 things that you have a responsibility to do. Maybe it is, and I think we'd also probably have a 4th role called accountability, and it would be, you would put numbers in the system every day. We would have key metrics that we would say drive success. So you have to get 2 points a day within the Griffin Hills system. You have to strive for a 25 to 40% needs audit to close ratio. You need to have 15 deals in your pipeline at all times. And then within those, you would say, here are directions, here's instructions that I need you to do. And so we would give you specific things as a manager, again, not to micromanage you, but so that you have key information on how to do the job. We would have instructions on how to get 2 points a day, how to prospect, how to work your pipeline, how to keep your pipeline at a certain size, how to have the metrics that we expect. And so then you'd have directions. And so then as an employee, you would go in, I'd say, you know, we're looking for about 3 times a week at a minimum. Probably for salespeople, it's probably closer to 5. We almost want that daily. And you would look through what's expected of you. You'd look at your roles, you'd think about it. You would look at the responsibilities within those roles, and then you can even, there's an expand button, and you can then look at the directions. And you think about those, and then you think about your day and what activity's been done, and hopefully something stimulates thought in you to talk to your manager, and then you would give them a status update. And you give yourself a score on the item. So you pick one of the items. You would ideally just report on one of them, and you'd pick that item. That's also the value of doing it almost daily. You don't wait a week and then blast your manager 5 updates in one session. You would kind of just report on one thing at a time, and you'd look at, and you'd think, what stands out to me? What's the most meaningful, significant thing that's happened to me today? And you would, as you've looked at them and reviewed the work, and then you would give them an update, you'd give yourself a score and a grade, A, B, C, D, and then you would give them comment on why what you felt, what's going on, what's an update there, and why you gave yourself that score, and what's some stuff you want to change or do. And again, for the manager, that allows you to have your employee think about the stuff that you said was important from a role standpoint, from a responsibility standpoint within the role, and then the directions within those responsibilities, and then to give you an update, and then you can comment back as the manager. The other part of this is that about once a month, you would go in and each of you independently would score these things based on saying, how important is this? You know, is this mission critical? And how much of my day does it take? And where's my skill level on this responsibility? And what's my actual performance? Because you may have a lot of skill, but you're not performing there. And the manager and the employee go in and rank those things. And then the tool compares them and you see how aligned you are, to where you may say, hey, this is the most important thing I do. And your manager's like, no, it's a 3 out of 7. And you may say, I am world class at this. And your manager may think, I think you need improvement there. And so it's a way to check your alignment to see how aligned you guys are on those items.
Thank you. No, that's really good. So could we almost look at this, Ted, and say this is intelligence every week that's going to a manager?
Yeah, it's business intelligence, and it's again, it's not every week. I think it's probably every other day at the longest.
Yeah. So
now it doesn't turn out to be that always. People don't always do them every other day, but that would be the expectation, that you never go longer than a day. You know, you get information Monday. You would, the most you'd go would be Tuesday would be without information, and Wednesday again you would get business intelligence again on the things that you've already established that matter the most. What's the absolute thing that matters the most in this position? You're getting real-time intelligence, almost real-time intelligence, at least every other day from the boots on the ground.
Yeah, so I think this is an amazing tool for us to gather the very thing we're talking about here. We've already got it in place. It's already been working. The thing we have to do, I think from your standpoint, you know, as ones who are filling out PATs, all of us, and those that will be, is that we don't look at it as, oh gosh, I got to fill out this PAT thing. We look at it as, I'm giving boots on the ground intelligence to my commander so that they can again analyze. So it's constant, you know, real-time information that you're feeding to the people. And that's exactly what the book talked about when it talked about McChrystal, was that instead of them giving stuff to the front line now gives stuff to them, and then we can analyze those things. That's how it should flow. So this really should be looked at as, it's status updates, but it's intelligence status updates. And those are the things that make a difference. It helps us to be able to work on things in real time as we go. We have our plan and so forth, but now we can make those adjustments. So it's like playing the football game. We're getting status updates. We're not on the field with everybody. Your managers, you're not on the field every single day. So status update, intelligence status updates are going to give you the things that you need to do to adjust. So thank you for that. It's a great tool. So Joe, I'm going to turn some time over to you to talk about, you know, some of the other things that we had mentioned before, and kind of take us down that.
Let me just say for 15 seconds before we do that, if any of you are curious about that, don't know what it is, want to know, ask your manager, and it's something anybody can use and use for your people. Every person you add on, I think, adds $15 a month to us, so it's not that expensive. It does cost, but it's not an exorbitant amount. So it's available to everybody, and you don't have to feel like, oh, it's cool, but it's not for me. It is available, and you can sign up all your people on it, or you if you're not on it or whatever. And we pay $15 per month per head. So it's available, and just ask your manager. If they don't know, then have them ask their manager. And if they don't know, have them ask their manager. And or you can come and ask me and I can do it. Hey, Joe.
So I've been working with Scott Baird, who is, the founder of Griffin Hill, on key outcome plans and on core responsibilities and duties, and loading these things into Griffin Hill. We have some new folks. We're also onboarding out in Georgia, and it's going to be impossible to be physically there once a week to review and understand. And so there's better in other ways. Bree, you and I have kind of a fun story with the priority alignment tool, because the priority alignment tool is more than just an update system. It's also a way to clearly know how your manager views the expectations that they have for you. And that is one of the things about the Q12 is at work, I clearly understand what is expected of me. And Bree, you and I, when we did our initial priority alignment tool, I loaded in roles and responsibilities, and then I kind of graded how much time I felt like that you should be putting on different types of things. And you put in different types of things. Would you mind sharing with me your feelings about how that went? And it was quite shocking and eye-opening, I think, for both of us.
So as transparent as I could be, I lost my dang mind. Because we were so off.
But it was fun because it color codes it, right?
So we got on track after that.
Well, and here's the interesting thing that happens is that you as a leader might think that the priority or how much time someone should be spending on something is like this much, and they may think that it's this much. Or, and there's a lot of different ways to kind of evaluate and look at that. And in this priority alignment tool is there as a tool for all of us to help you be more in sync with your teams. And so maybe once a quarter, doing a kind of a refresh or reevaluation of what I think versus what you think on these things. You can do that inside of there. But the core importance is liberating intelligence. And how the meetings that we do, I think almost all of us have a weekly war meeting or a weekly meeting where we talk about KPIs and what's going on in the business. And this is about intelligence. But that data, just as Ted had mentioned, is outdated second you leave that meeting, or the next day, or the next day after that. And so liberating data is what this is all about. And stop worrying so much about what that data is and just give updates. One of the core philosophies they had as part of all of this is it's more important about frequency than quality. And so the component I want to dive into next is we want to challenge you all to first is to go look more in depth into the priority alignment tool and how you can leverage that as a leader. And the second thing that we're going to challenge you as part of this is a fun component that was talked about leaders, which was the check-ins. I would love to ask for any volunteers who remembers what the 2 steps of a check-in was. Or I can call on someone. It was really simple. When you are doing a check-in with someone, what are the 2 things to ask them according to the book? Any ideas on that? And I hate the memory thing, so maybe we'll just tell you what it is, and then I'll call on people to give the impressions of that. But anyone know what those 2 things were? Okay, so the 2 things is when you're doing check-ins, Arturo's got it. Go for it, Arturo.
I believe it is how you're doing and how can I help?
That's pretty darn close, exactly. What are your priorities and how can I help?
Yes.
Now, here was something that I found very interesting is what is everyone's ability to manage? How many people can every one of us manage? And that was an interesting thing. It says, well, that really depends on you and how many people can you do these types of check-ins with and support. And anyone know what's some of the values of doing this when you're having these one-on-ones with people and they were saying weekly. Weekly or biweekly is going to be some of the most important things to do. But asking these two questions: what are your priorities, and how can I help? Why do you think the value of asking those two questions are? Maddie, I'm going to call on you because I always know that you have something very interesting to say about these things.
Can you repeat the question? I don't think I understand it.
Yep. So I'll use it in this. I'm teasing. So the check-in has two components. Component one is what are your priorities? And so often, at least meeting with your people and asking them, what are your priorities? And how can I help you? What do you think the value of those things are?
I think you just understand where that person's at. And if you think they have different priorities than you have set for them, like if you're setting those priorities and then they shift, then you understand what they're working towards. And then maybe why they're not hitting their KPI start make sense, or why do they have their calendar set up the way they do is going to start making sense. And then everything's just going to start aligning once you understand what they're working towards. And then asking the second question of how can I help, then they know you're there to support them as a manager and help them as they're hitting these goals.
Love that. Maria, and then Ashley.
Yeah, so for me, it's kind of like when I do my one-on-ones with Kyle. He'll give me his feedback for the week or for the day. I give him my feedback. Usually I speak to Kyle once a day and he knows what I'm working on. But when we do our one-on-ones, he'll like ask me, what are you working on? Do you have any questions for me? Do you have anything to bring to the table? How can I help you, get what you need done? I'm the kind of person that takes on a lot. I'm like the yes person. Hey, can you do this? Sure. Can you do this? Sure. And Kyle knows that. So he'll ask me, like, is there anything I can take off your plate so that you can do your job better? And I think as managers, that's a really important thing in understanding how our people work.
Yeah, I really love that comment is, oftentimes when disasters happen in our lives, you have, friends or other people reach out and say, well, what can I do for you? And you're kind of in chaos mode and not really capable of saying, well, I need this, this, and this. And so that's the trick, is to make sure as a leader that this doesn't become placating, that it's just, well, do you need, it's not really an offer. And so it needs to be real. It needs to be not just, is there anything I can do for you? It needs to be real. And so I'd love to talk about how can we make it a little bit more real in a moment. But Ashley, you lowered your hand, so I don't know if you still have a comment, but I wanted to give you space to share a comment on these two questions. What are your priorities, and how can I help you?
I put my hand down because Maddie covered it entirely. The more she talked, the more I was like, yep, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Nailed it. I love it. Cool. Jason, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's funny you bring this up because Shane is the king of saying, is there anything else I can do for you? What can I do for you? And and he's very sincere about it, but I put him to the test because sometimes, just like you say, people just say, hey, what can I do for you? Or, what can I do to make your job easier? Things like that. It's just a thing to say. So I actually just, I brought a couple of things up and put it on the table for him and said, yeah, these are a couple of things that, I'm thinking about that you can maybe help me out with. And he's actually come through, anytime I've done it. So, props to Shane for actually backing up when he says, is there anything I can do for you?
That is the sign of a great leader. So huge shout out to you, Shane. We've been grateful for your leadership too. Carrie, go ahead.
Yeah. So just to kind of emphasize this a little bit, the question is, what are your priorities this week? So I think that's important because we don't want to confuse it with, hey, maybe what's your priorities in life, or what's your priorities, for the company. This is this week. And so I know as a leadership team, every week we have priorities that we set up and we turn in. And it's valuable to be able to say, look, here's the priorities I'm working on. Now we do 3, but 3 isn't really this magic number. It can be 1. What's the one main thing that you got to do this week? What's the most important thing that's going to be helpful? But having those priorities every week, it makes you think rather than just going through the motion of kind of doing your job, but what are the priorities we're focused on? And then when we have team members that can kind of help us out, that's really strong. So we are doing this. I think it needs to go deeper in the company. And I think that people, again, this is, a practice we've been doing now for a couple of years since Ted came on board. What are our priorities this week that we're going to be focused on?
And not only is that also a form of intelligence gathering of how does someone see their priorities, it is also a form of ways that you can find ways to serve your people. And I would even put out there that the best leaders are leaders who actually are the servant leaders, the ones that are looking for ways to help you and not just say, do this, but actually say, what is it that I can do to help you with these things? What are some ways and other ideas on us to become servant leaders? And I see, Maria, you've got your hand up. I apologize, I didn't see that until just now. I want to also give you space to add a comment.
It is also important to realize that even though we have priorities for today, tomorrow, the week, those priorities can change. And our team needs to understand that we can make those changes without feeling like you failed or you didn't succeed on those priorities, because for back office, there's a lot of stuff I do with Kyle that no one else knows we do. And even though I had my set schedule for this week, we were hit with a curveball that we needed to do some E-Verify audits and clean up E-Verify within the E-Verify system. So that right there put all my priorities on the side to make sure that this took priority and this got taken care of. So sometimes things don't align the way you want them to align, and that is okay.
Yeah, it's a challenge too, because if you read some of Stephen Covey's things, there's 4 quadrants, but the quadrant you want to live in is the important but not urgent bucket. And I have found by moving over to our light industrial space that way too many things consistently are in the important and urgent category. And when you live in the important and urgent category, it is emotionally exhausting. It drains you of your vitality. I can promise you that. And so there's a big focus that you need to find to say, how can we be proactive? And one of the things that that I learned mostly working with Bree and Maddie, and we put these really big focus on time blocking, is because when everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. And that becomes difficult because you have to put fires out. But if you don't give yourself space and force yourself to hold that space very much a priority for future thinking or for future work, you wind up sabotaging your work tomorrow or in a week or in a month. And there's examples of that in sales, which is simply prospecting. If you don't spend any time prospecting, you won't ever, your pipeline will dry out. And so this is why we see so many sales folks have peaks and valleys in sales, is because it's not a daily activity. On sites, this was a conversation that we just had with some of our Georgia team that says, listen, safety updates or safety reviews is part of our responsibility. And yet issues keep happening and they keep getting bombarded and keep pulling them away. And so how do you keep time sacred is a fun thing to really be thinking through in each one of our businesses. But one of the areas that I want to drive towards is that KPIs are exceptionally important. But here's something that's fun to think about. There's a big difference between activity KPIs and outcome KPIs. And what we're mostly talking about is liberating intelligence so we can win as a business. And giving your team the space to understand the difference between these two things, because you as a manager need to know, is that person effective? But is that really what you're asking? I think what you're actually asking is are we being effective for a customer? And so I want you to be thinking through the KPIs that you are asking for. And if they're strictly just activity KPIs and not outcome KPIs, we might want to think through the difference of those things. Carrie, you have a hierarchy of the way that you think on this. It's always productivity before, and I want to give that to you. You've said this to me probably 3.5 million times. But what is the way that you think of reporting as far as it goes for performance?
Yeah, so you've got to, it's about productivity, not activity. Activity, so productivity and performance equal profitability, and that's a Griffin Hill thing. So when you have good productivity, we've got to get companies, on the playing field. We got to have that productivity. Activity helps us get there, but productivity is where we score points. So is that what you're asking me? Is that?
That's right. So it's fun because you can be on the field but not scoring first downs. And if you're not scoring first downs, you're never going, you can throw Hail Marys all you want all the time, but who wants to live in a world where you can only win by throwing Hail Marys? The right game plan is by, you have, if we're going to go with the football example, we have, 4 downs to get that first, new set of downs so we can keep marching down the field. And the way we do that is through data and intelligence. You're going to say something else, Carrie.
Well, I was just going to say that's where we have performance. So you've got people who have, your performance, your ability. And so if you're doing all these things, you're on the field, but you're not scoring points, then there's a performance issue. If you're really good, at the performing thing, but we're still not scoring points, there's a productivity issue. So you have to have both of those things, and they can get better. And we can watch as managers how they work in order to make profitability. So anyway, yep.
That's exactly right. So I want you to be thinking through the way that you do your reporting with your teams and realize there's difference between activity KPIs and outcome KPIs. And activity should be driving outcomes, and make sure that the way that you're looking at your data and the way that you're making sure you're working with your teams is focused on outcomes, but activities that generate outcomes, because it's fun. You can be very busy and go nowhere. And none of us are looking for that out of both our quality of life and our teams. And so this week, our challenge to you is to be looking at the way you're looking at your team's activity and productivity. And second to that, to liberate as much information as you can and share it with your team, and worry less about that, worry that it's accurate, and don't necessarily try to spend a bunch of time formulating the data, but get that into the hands of all of your teams so that they understand and can make better decisions. If you lead by context, you have a lot better chance of success. And then the last challenge that we have for you is check-ins. And make sure you ask these 2 questions. What are your priorities this week? And what can I do to help you? And mean it, just like Shane when Jason called him out. And he meant it, and he went out of his way for it. It's also, if your leader is asking you these same questions, don't forget to be willing to ask for help.
Yeah. Very good. So kind of wrap up here. One of the things, Joe, you mentioned this as you kind of took over this new role with, with smart staffing, that there's a lot of urgent things that come up. And I want to bring this up just real quickly. Some of you have heard me use this. I've been using this for many, many years. I promise it works. But if you're proactive, that equals fun. If you're reactive, which is where a lot of the staffing world lives, is reactive mode, that equals stress. And inactive equals fired or quit. So be in the proactive realm as much as you possibly can. That comes through this stuff we're talking about, the activity which produces the productivity. When you can be proactive and doing the right things and know what's going to happen, you're going to have a lot more fun in your job. If you're constantly working off of urgency or reactive mode, you're going to be stressed a lot. And some of you have already lived that world. I've lived it and I don't like it. I like to be proactive. So, but thanks, Joe, for that information. That was really good. I just want to conclude with these. The very last page in this chapter says the best, most effective way to create clarity of expectations is to figure out how to let your people figure it out for themselves. So we're giving them that, you know, like the very thing that we read on the culture, we empower them to do this. So to do this, give your people as much accurate data as you can, so often as you can, a real-time view of what's going on right now. Okay, that's how they make good decisions. That's how they can be proactive themselves and make this work. So any other comments before we end the call? If not, next week, let me just pull up my sheet here. We're going to talk about oh, hang on just a second. It's going to be chapter lie number 3, cascading goals. So we're going to talk about cascading goals. That's lie number 3. That's your reading assignment. And then the week following, and Ted, I'm throwing this at you. You're on the list. If you're available, I want to do that next week. Would be goal setting and budgeting and planning and you know, all about that. I know you have a great program for that, and I'd love to have you share that with the team as well, if you're okay with that. So if not, just let me know.
Next week or in 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
I'm out that whole week from the 10th to the 17th.
So let's maybe do the week after. We'll just switch. Okay. We'll just switch some things around. So if you can plan maybe in a few weeks, then so.
Or it'd be the 23rd, right? Okay.
Yeah, whatever is that. So if that's the date, I'll mark it down as the 23rd. So.
Okay.
Cool. So thank you guys. Appreciate everybody's comments. It was really good discussion. I hope that we got some good stuff out of it. Intelligence, you know, priorities. Let's work on those things. And you guys have a great weekend. And we shall see you next week. Thank you.
See you guys.